with us the very, very lovely Liam Worthington. Welcome aboard, Liam.
Thank you, it's lovely to be here.
Now, I'll tell you what, this wasn't much of a walk for you. It's a bit of a walk down memory lane coming to our Budgie Boy studio.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this was where I think I lived here when I was age 1 to 3 with my grandparents. They came up and settled here after they immigrated to Australia after World War II. Granddad, I think, had wanted to get away from all the horrors of England after having lived through it and sort of fought in the war. And so they did. So they immigrated up here to Budgie Boy, and this is where they carried just up the home.
What, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah.
But you have it. But although you have worldly travelled, you've come to settle on the Central Coast, which is amazing.
I ended up moving back up here about nearly 25 years ago. I had a theatre company and we moved back up to the Central Coast. We're doing some shows up here and ended up staying put, and I'm at Wombrel Beach now. I love the coast.
So tell me, you've just released a new movie out, One Less God. It's absolutely brilliant, very thought-provoking, very confrontational at some points. Very heart, it's a thriller. It is a psychological thriller. Tell me, how did this all come apart? Because you've written it. You're one of the producers, and you also then directed the movie. So how did all of this come about?
I'd actually had a few films that I'd sort of been working on for a number of years, feature films, and a couple of them fell over, which is pretty common in the film industry.
Very much
right?
so.
But,
yes.
but
well, that's just cutting your teeth, really, isn't it? I mean, that's just building up to the one, yes, yeah.
And then this was a project where I sort of got to it when, this time, this is too important to me, and I didn't want this one to ever fall over. And the reason it was so important to me was I'd been to India myself, I'd been to Mumbai, and I had a deep attachment to India and Indian people, spiritual traditions. I think it helped make me a better person, a better human.
Right. Yes.
And so when I came back to Australia and I was living here, and then the attacks happened, they resonated strongly. And then, of course, we had 2 Australians who died inside the attacks.
Exactly. Well, tell us a bit about the attacks, because a lot of people don't realise. I mean, this was India's 9/11. There was a lot of people that were killed.
It was huge. Yes, I mean, it was, and in some ways it's even more relevant to us now than what 9/11 is.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. I mean, because what you have is 10 militants who came across from Pakistan, and they divided into pairs, and they attacked multiple targets, and then they also hit other targets of opportunity. These are highly trained AK-47s, grenades.
Absolutely.
They're on drugs, so that so it's suppressing their, so they're not having the usual nerves and the different things. And this, this is what some of the top organisations, they all do this. They, with that, because they're religiously conservative, we imagine that they won't, that this will be a barrier, a line they don't cross, but they do.
No, they do. Wow.
So they came across and they hit, and that was
unfortunately very successful.
This was 2008. This is November. We're just coming up to the 10th anniversary very soon. Yeah.
Wow, what a time to bring this out.
Yeah.
The 10th anniversary. Yeah. So sorry, I've interrupted you. So that these highly, militarised, highly trained.
So they're attacking these multiple targets, and they want to attack that. And then the foremost of those was the luxury Taj Mahal Palace Hotel.
Of course.
And that was someone very iconic to Indians, because it's not just somewhere where the wealthy stay in India. They'll travel from across the country to see it.
And also around the world.
Get married, and then around the world.
Exactly. I mean, that's where you go. When you go to India, that's on your number one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a place like, it's full of stories. Yoko Ono and John Lennon famously holed up for 8 days there, wouldn't come out of their room, and they just slip them rice under the door. It's just...
That's right. Yes, it's an idyllic place. Yeah, I like it.
So they knew what they were doing when they're attacking something like this. They know it's going to be huge global news, and of course it's full of international tourists as well.
Absolutely.
And that model for what they did became the model that inspired the attacks we saw in France with multiple operatives, the Bataclan Theatre, and attacking different spots at that time. That's where it shifted. We haven't seen any airplanes crash into buildings since 9/11.
That's so true. Interesting. Yes, but this strategy is still ongoing and refined, unfortunately.
And as we start to control guns, it's starting to turn into cars, instead it's becoming this is the shifting
What I get
model.
from the film, that, I mean, you've talked about a connection with India, but I feel there's a stronger connection with did you know people who were involved in this that were there? Yeah,
myself and my co-story creator, we both discovered fairly, I think within a week or two after the attacks, we discovered we both had friends who lost people in the
goodness,
attacks. So
yes.
just not many degrees of separation.
No.
And these kind of events, we had 166 people who lost their lives in
Wow.
the attacks, and many hundreds wounded, and of course
Many
many thousands
hundreds,
caught
yes.
inside it. So you don't have to go many degrees of separation before you start
that's
finding.
right. Yes.
Yeah, but
And it
certainly
rocked their community. I mean,
stopped a country of
Yes.
1.2 billion people.
Yes,
you know,
they are a huge country.
Yeah.
And so, thinking about that you resonated with India as a country, and then you knew of people that had been horribly affected by this. When did you start thinking, I need to write about this?
Yeah, I penned the first draft probably only about 6 months afterwards.
Goodness me, so it's still quite fresh.
Just began researching, but of course more and more information about, what was driving the attacks started to emerge behind the geopolitics, and Lashkar-e-Taiba, the organisation who was responsible, that came out of Pakistan, and then discovering that, there were strong ties that they had assistance from Pakistan, support from the ISI, which is complicated, deep issues because it's connected to Kashmir, and Kashmir is a country which is very beautiful in India, which is during the partition back in earlier in the last century, in 48 was it, I think it was, but it went to India, and it had a higher Muslim population at that point, and then they sort of always argued that it should have gone to Pakistan, and that has sort of been an ongoing, major,
I mean, those boundaries are ongoing. I mean, they're always problematic with that.
Yeah, hugely so.
So, in terms of making a film out of this, when did you think there's a film in this?
Yeah, I mean, right from the get-go, I think when listening to some of the survivors and hearing the stories, there were things that, I mean, people go, well, it's so ambitious, why would you take this on?
Yes, huge.
But, the ambition of scale of a project is one thing, but the ambition of idea is different.
Yes.
And I don't think that independent filmmakers have to not be ambitious in their idea of the kind of emotional content they want to explore or having something to say.
Wow.
In fact, I think we do that a lot better most of the time than studio films do, because our objectives are different, and we don't have the same limitations about trying to make your film play across all four quadrants, so you can get a family film and I get as many bums on seats as I can to make as much money as I can. So that was one thing, but I'd hear stories that so many people, the experience was being trapped up inside a place and experience it like theatre of the mind, where it's the sounds of the world, and then some social media or a phone call where you're too scared to even whisper into your phone about what's going on. And that really is some of the hallmarks of good indie cinema too, things that you can achieve. And so it's about, for us striking out on that path to get a balance where we could do justice to a sense of the scale, but really capture the core experience for at least what was it for a lot of people.
That's amazing, but in terms of an ambitious project, I'm wondering how you cast for this, because you're talking about something that happened in India.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, because we're talking about, you would have to have cast, I'm assuming, terrorists in this.
I didn't cast actual terrorists.
No. Yes. But you had to research them, didn't you? Yes. But people for that, so of a consistent ethnic background as well. I mean, this is a huge project.
Exactly.
You then had the staff there, the hotel staff that were in India, the various international travellers that were there. I mean, this is a huge project, mammoth. So I can imagine 10 years in the making, I guess.
Yeah, well, people talk about it, they say, look, you've got this because we travelled quite a bit to different festivals, and some of those internationally too. And people say, how do you get this highly international, diverse cast? How do you do that?
Yes.
And I get to say, well, they are a highly international, diverse cast, and they're all Australian.
All Australian.
That's our community.
Blows me away.
That's our community. We are a highly diverse country.
Exactly.
And, for the most part, I think we live in really great cohesion and harmony.
Yes.
Even though it gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes, I think.
And the talent as well. I mean, not only have you got such diverse ethnicities and playing extremely different roles, but to find that talent as well in Australia, we know it's there.
We do. Well,
We do.
we have amazing talent. You know, I mean, we show that. I mean, when you travel internationally, they'll talk about Australian film industry as we punch way above our weight, way above our weight.
Yes,
but unfortunately, we export most of our talent, right? So you know, you break through as an actor and we lose them. You break through as a director and we lose them to bigger industries.
Exactly.
So we have to retain that talent. But we're making phenomenal people. So for the acting world, for me, it was just about getting out there, putting out the opportunities, having wider casting calls than are more typical. Because I've been on in front of the lens myself many years ago too.
There you go.
And you just know there's a lot of great people out there that get overlooked. So we wanted to open that up and find them, and I think we really did. We got a lot of some stunning performances.
Yeah, you did. Some of them are actually making their screen debuts, which it blows me away watching the film because they are just so talented. They look like they're so natural that they've been behind in front of the camera and behind the scenes in terms of forever.
Well, one of them's a local boy actually. He's Joe Taylor, plays for Terrible Trojans and for Central Coast Rugby, represents Central Coast Rugby. And he plays the lead role of Sean, the Irish backpacker. Though everyone thinks when everyone watches the film, they just even Irish people. We've had Irish people one of the last Q&As. They assume he's Irish. Like, I'm so proud of my countrymen.
He's
actually an local Australian. Sorry, disappoint you.
He's a funny player down from the Central Coast.
That's right. That's he does amazing. A phenomenal job, and he's been a bunch of people doing.
I love it that Aussie writers, directors, producers such as yourself are giving the opportunities to our locals actors, but also behind the scenes too, because this is an Aussie cast. Where did you actually film it? I mean, I can't imagine that would have been great going to India and knocking on the door there. Did you try that? Attempt that?
Yeah, I mean, we had to. We knew we wanted to get exteriors from India, but we were supposed to be en route. I think about 2 weeks. We were heading off to Mumbai to film exteriors, and there were a couple of motorcycle bombings, other terrorist attacks took place, and so it went on the recommended no-fly list, and so we couldn't head in that way.
No, you can't have that risk, can you? Unfortunately,
no, to taking actors over there and that environment at that point. So we had to shoot for the next best thing, which was in Nepal. So we got shot northern India and Nepal there, where we got a version, which actually in some ways was good because Mumbai is changing so fast. So many people flooding into the country every year. That even shooting 5 years on, Mumbai was starting to change a lot. So
how interesting! To try and maintain the integrity of that time frame as well. Yeah. Yes. What were some of the difficulties in Nepal that you came across in the?
There's very interesting difficulties in Nepal. I mean, Nepal is still considered, China considers itself as owning Nepal, and so I didn't realise that when we wanted to shoot in Nepal, the Chinese government would want us to get approval from them. They want full approval of the script. They want to have a Chinese script supervisor on board that you have to pay for on set all the time. This is in Nepal when you're shooting. It was just not something I expected, to have to deal with. But
that's amazing. Yeah, so this has been an amazing journey for you as well. And as well, Liam, you've had lots of different other projects on the side as well. This has been obviously the big one, but the journey has been tremendous for you as a writer, an actor yourself, and a writer and a producer. Yeah, so you've got local producers as well, Australian producers.
We do. Maren Smith is also a local. She lives in Sydney now, but she was born and bred on the Central Coast and went to high school here and has lots of friends here. So we have some of our lead cast. We have producers and a writer director, all coast based, which is why I'm also we pushed hard with our distributors to make sure that they would get some cinemas up here and do a good local release so people can get along to see the film. Yes,
now it was a sellout Evoca on Friday night, and you do have some other screenings as well. Shall I take you through those, or do you know them off the top of your head?
Yeah, I do know actually. So
you do? Good on you.
So, November 1st, we're in terms of closer up this way to Lake Haven, the Metro, lovely cinema there.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so we're November 1st, we do a Q&A opening night there, which is always a good one to come along and hear from the filmmakers. Yeah, this Thursday coming up. Then we're open for that week, so you can book a time and come into the cinema. We also, I'm heading off after this to do a Q&A down at Evoca for another screening, and then we've got Evoca on the 18th of November as well. So now, do
people need to book in? Because I can imagine there would be a lot of aspiring writers, actors, directors, producers, behind the scenes people who want to have a chat with. I mean, it's not every day that we have a great film, a great story behind it, great actors in it, all local, and then you're accessible to have a Q&A.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such an opportunity for some of the upcoming actors that we've got, some of the students that we have. We've got Hunter School Performing Arts up the road here, of course.
Yeah, great.
And they'll be flooding in.
Yeah, well, we have been telling people to book to save disappointment too, and make sure. I think like the first night when we were at Tuggerah, it was only the front row was left in terms of the seating, which the neck crank, and then even by the time we walked in, I think half of those are gone. So it's just a handful of front row seats that are off in the very corner. So I think it's definitely one to call up for, to make sure that you get good seats. And,
how do you feel as writer, producer, director? When do you sit in there while people are watching the film?
I have many times. I've now got to the point where it's just been too many times. It's just a psychological torture exercise. So do
you start picking things and I could have done that a bit differently?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of your job when you're making the film,
exactly.
Right? Is you keep focusing on the shortcomings, and so you will always focus in on those, and the emotional resonance starts to fall away until it's just.
It must be interesting though, gathering from that crowd experience though. What is quite gut wrenching for them? What is
absolutely.
Quite fearful and evoking all those. I mean, you did that you out of a tragedy birthed this.
That's right.
So it must be very rewarding to see that the effects it has on people. That's why you make the movies, I assume.
It's hard. I mean, there's a lot of time. The thing I hate the most probably is going to cinema and walking out flat afterwards. Just that empty kind of feeling. Now, I want cinema to affect me.
Yes.
I want to feel that that I've spent a couple of hours of your precious life, that it actually was to take you somewhere, to affect you in some way. Now, obviously, these events are very harrowing. These are incredibly tragic events, so we had to be very true to that story. But I think there is also, we've touched on some deeper messages around our shared humanity and how we why some of these issues are happening too, and can try to how we can hope to move forward. So those things are embedded in the film, and but definitely audiences they're incredibly emotionally affected. It's such it's like I said, it's harrowing material, so it's not for the faint of heart. But people who I've had a lot of people who say, look, this is the kind of stuff that a heavy film about, a terrorist attack is not something I would ever usually want to watch, but I'm so glad I did, because where we go in this film, it's just, it really has a message also of hope and beauty and a great call for compassion and love at the heart resonance, not just depicting the horror and the suffering, which obviously it's very important to do that also.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's not just a big bang movie, we're not just, shoot 'em up, kill 'em up, it's got some depth to it, some thought, provoking thought about that. And I think this is important for some of the teens to come along too as well, and have a look at some of the behind the scenes is what happens. So often we're bombarded with it on the media,
exactly.
And then it goes. You're bombarded with the tragedy, and then it goes. But this is actually looking at how it affects each person. And
it's the human cube, bang on,
And we often get very desensitized to it, and don't realise that they're not just numbers; they're actually all real people.
That's right.
And they have families and friends and communities, and they have jobs and
that's
so
right.
forth. Yeah.
It's so well put. And when we don't really show that human cost, when that's not really felt, then what happens is that one is that on one side of it, young people are more easily radicalized, because it becomes Call of Duty jihadi. It's like a video game, but now I'm a jihadi as my superhero character.
Exactly.
And so you get people who can go that way. And then on the flip side, we can just hear of another terrorist attack. We can just hear someone walking in the UK, and with a vest strapped on and blowing up an Ariana Grande concert. And we go, oh, that's terrible, but we don't really feel shocked or impacted.
No.
By that in the way that you would hope that we're not going to lose that sensitivity as because
I think as well as an audience now we're becoming a bit more discerning, and we are wanting more out
demanding
of it.
more.
We are demanding more, because there is so much out there that we are filtering through, and we are wanting great stories. We are wanting stories based on factual events. We're wanting local actors. I mean, we're demanding these things now.
I think that's really. I think it's really important. You mentioned that before too, that local talent thing. I mean, I know one of the actors in this film. He plays a lead terrorist. He gives a credible performance. Lovely guy. Very challenging to play that kind of role to humanize someone.
Absolutely.
Responsible for that.
Yes, but these are human. They're humans, and they are doing it for a cause.
Yeah, they are.
They feel that they are the heroes. in this.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's something that, that's the indoctrination. That's what it does. I mean, most of the Aussies we can certainly relate to. I think if someone killed your family, it'd be very easy. If we were in Afghanistan and someone bombed your family, you'd have no problem going, that's it, I don't care who you are, I want to hunt you down, I want to kill you.
Yes.
That would evoke that primal response in us. What they do, is they take these kids to pick them up off the streets of Lahore. The one who's kind of most central to our film story was picked up on the streets of Lahore when he come in from the regional areas because there's no prospects out where they are with his family.
Exactly.
Comes a petty thief living on the streets and he's there going to buy his first gun and the handlers spot him and they pick him up and they take him out to Kashmir training camp and they show him they show footage of dead children in Gaza. They show him Hindus destroying the Babri Masjid, the mosque in India, one of the famous mosques, and they build this narrative, and they create this resentment, this hate, and this idea of what Indians
and
are,
now
and what
suddenly
foreign
this
nationals
guy
are.
has a purpose, and he has a.
He thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yes, that's exactly right. This is a really confronting way of looking at and exploring the issues.
It's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like people think they're just monsters. It's just all. The Islamic jihadism is just a bug light for psychopaths.
Yes,
Unfortunately, it's a much more complex, and bigger problem than that. We have to deal with people who are some of the, you can be a good person.
Yes.
And find yourself on the streets, with an AK-47 in your hands. Now that's a much harder problem to get your head around.
Exactly.
How does that happen?
Yes, yeah.
And that's what we have to
unravel.
unravel.
But it is happening, yes.
Yeah.
And perhaps through this storytelling that you are providing to us as a larger community, we can start thinking about what we are indoctrinating, not only our community, but the radicalisation of kiddies. And start thinking about how we can perhaps change as a
Well, this is why ideas matter so much, right? I know you do this work on your program for your background, is that, our ideas really do matter. And I think for me, and it's of course certainly a core tenet of the film, is the ideas that separate us from each other are potentially very dangerous ideas, and then the ideas that separate us from love, from connection. And so these are some of the challenges, because most of the great spiritual teachings pertains the idea that the central tenet is just about love, but we know there is a whole subset of other rules and other practices which don't have that function. They don't serve to bring us together. They do create boundaries and they do create problems for us. And then it's so easy for people to find themselves opposing each other, and then from that humans. And then if we stop talking like this, humans, we fight. That's what we do.
Exactly right. Exactly
so
right. Yes, we become quite animalistic. We go back to that reptilian part. Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting. A very complex subject that you've really brought to life. So we appreciate you taking some time out to chat with us, and can't wait to see you at it's Thursday, the 1st of November, which is this week. Amazingly, I mean, it's, for you, this must be amazing. Suddenly seeing it come to fruition. This project.
The last month we've been rolling out, so I've just been on a bit of a whirlwind.
I can imagine. And at Lake Haven, you can have a Q&A with yourself, Liam. Are you bringing anyone else?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm going to bring a couple of the cast members. So,
how exciting!
So
that is great. Well, I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, and what a fantastic film. Again, amazing local talent. So thank you, Liam Worthington. I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'm going to give you a song. I'm thinking perhaps Cold Chisel. Is that one of your? Do you remember Cold Chisel?
Oh yeah, Jimmy Barnes.
Well, I like this one, Flame Trees, which is talks about some of the difficulties from the Vietnam War, which is a very we're almost talking about very similar things. We're just picking it up and putting it in a different.
I saw that on your sheet. I was thinking Cat Stevens' Where Do the Children Play, but
there we go.
Both in the right terrain.
Both the right terrain. There we go. Let's see how this goes. Thanks so much, Liam.
Thank you.